the basics of oil pastels. They're like paint in stick form. I can change this one oil pastel color by just using my pressure differently. So if I press hard as I color, it's thick. I can press lighter. Now I'm barely touching the paper. You can see it's leaving more of a texture. That is actually nice to use because it blends well. I like to take my finger and wrap it with a paper towel when I blend. You can see that blends and it makes it softer. If you go too thick right away with your oil pastels, it's going to be hard to blend color. Let's say I wanted to blend pink with it. I'm really thick already with my purple, so the pink doesn't stand out as much over here, versus where I put the purple down lighter, the pink shows up even more, and it's a little easier to blend. So kind of like when you're painting, starting in thin coats first helps you in the long run because you can layer your color more, versus if you put a thick coat down right away, you're not going to really be able to layer your color as much. White works well for blending and for lightening, so if you want a color to be lighter, add some white. You can see where I put less oil pastels, it stands out even more, so less is more, and I can make it darker as I need to, but it's a lot easier to start out light and make it darker than put it dark down right away, because I can't take it away once it's down, just like with paint. Let's do that with green. Here I'll put green down really thick, using pressure right away. And here I'll barely touch the paper, I'm just letting the oil pastel ride along the paper as I go. Feel free to peel the paper as you need to. Don't peel the whole thing off. That way you have some area for your hand to grab onto. So I'm barely touching the paper there, I'm making it nice and light. If you want to have texture, don't blend it. Just layer other colors on top. So now I'm going to put that light green over top. You can see it barely stands out there. Versus here, I can even go in the opposite direction of where I colored in first, going across instead of up and down, and it'll blend it and change its color as I go. This yellow's dirty. Before I go on there, I want to clean it off a little bit. And that's really brightening it up. So if I want to make something brighter, sometimes instead of adding white, adding a lighter version of your color, like I have green here, a lighter version was light green, and then I added yellow even more on top of that, kind of going down the color wheel. If I add white, it'll turn it into more of a pastel color, not quite a bright neon color. Being creative and mixing your color makes it more artistic and more interesting. Adding some brown into that green to make it a dark evergreen green makes it more interesting. This area is more textured than that area because I have less pressure when I colored it in. So experimenting with texture, with your pressure when you color, and with layering other colors on top to kind of match what you have in your image. Before you even start, this is my photo that I'm using as a reference. My color has very dark purple. The closest color I have is this magenta, but you can see it's not the exact same. I don't need to press hard at all with my oil pastels. When I layer the color on, when I layer a different color on top, it's going to start blending. I'm mixing brown with the magenta so that it looks a little more natural, and it's getting close, but not quite. That's not the best combo. If I add a little bit of red, that's getting there in maybe some of the bright areas. If I add black or a darker color to make this a little darker, I want to be careful not to press too hard. If I press hard, you can see the black really stands out, and that's going to be a bit overpowering when I go to blend it together. Be very light with it, barely touch the paper, and it'll blend much nicer. Let's try magenta, brown, a little bit of red, and blue. And that looks kind of nice. That looks pretty close to this actually. So I think that's the color combo I'm going to go with. To remind me, I'm going to put them all right next to each other there. I know that combination is the one that I want to use. when I don't want to make it so dark, I won't add as much blue. So those are the color combos I'm going to use. Dark over light is much easier than light over dark. So when you're working with oil pastel and when you're painting, if you put down the light areas first, it'll be easier for you to go in with the darker colors on top.